So happy Halloween. This is so exciting. This marks the end of October and all month. I've been doing my third annual Disney Scares month. And I thought it would be fun to kind of look back at all of the choices that I have made over the course of Disney Scares month for 3 years and just talk about them, and then also talk about some other good films for families to watch on Halloween. Most of them we'll talk about will be sort of Disney related or in that vein. So it should be pretty fun. So if you're looking for something to watch with your family today on Halloween, then this will be the perfect podcast for you to listen to. And I had to have a friend to talk about these with me. And so my friend AJ was kind enough to join me to talk about Disney Scares Month. So thanks so much, AJ.
Yeah, no problem. And hello, everybody who's listening or watching.
Yes. So you've been on the podcast a number of times. Yeah. And you want to just introduce yourself real quick, just in case this is our first time?
Oh, sure. So I'm AJ, like we said. I kind of used to write for rotoscopers.com. That's where Rachel and I met. I haven't written for them in a long time. I should again, but that's another subject. I'm really kind of a pop culture fan, just overall. And I like writing about pop cultural things, especially movies, and reviewing them. And I do that on my blog, Vintage Vestibule. And that's basically me.
Yeah. And what is your history or your experience with Disney and with scary movies?
So Disney, kind of basically the same history as anybody else has with Disney. I've watched them ever since I was like a little kid. My first movie I remember seeing was The Lion King in 1994, and I got scared at the end. Simple roared on the top of Pride Rock. And I think I might have had a meltdown in the theater because my mom didn't take me to the theater for a long, long, long time after that.
Yeah.
So but I love Disney. Like, it would take a long time for me to go into everything about it, but
I think a lot of people, their first scares were from a Disney film, but the villain, and I don't have in Disney Scares Month, I don't have any of the canon films, like say Pinocchio, which was definitely one of the scariest movies I'd ever seen, because I try for family movie night to only review movies I haven't reviewed before. And I've reviewed all of the Disney canon in another series on the Disney canon. So that's why these are all, different. And the part of that is just for my own just fun, because I like reviewing new stuff. So that's why, if people are wondering, like, why isn't that there? That's because, like Sleepy Hollow or something like that, it's because I already reviewed it. So anyway, just clarification. But yeah, what about you in scary movies? Where is your tolerance, I guess?
It's a lot more now that I've gotten older than it was when I was younger. Like, I always kind of liked being scared. Like, I would read like Goosebumps books and stuff like that back when they were like really popular. And I liked that, but I think because I could control it with my own imagination, what I saw and what I didn't see, it didn't scare me as much. But when I saw like a movie, it would freak me out when I was a kid, and I would have to leave the room early. Like, I remember when I was a kid, I saw Twilight Zone, the movie, in that very first sequence with Dan Aykroyd and Albert Brooks in the car. That freaked me out so bad I didn't watch that movie again for like almost 20 years after seeing it that first time. But I always also kind of liked the feeling of being scared. Like, I like that suspenseful tension that you feel like when it's building up to something, a scary movie. So I liked it, but I didn't really have a super high tolerance for it at the time. Kind of an interesting mixture.
But you got over it, because you've seen some pretty scary movies. We've talked about it.
Yeah, like, I like scary movies now. Like most of them don't really scare me as much anymore, which is kind of a sad trade-off in a way.
Used to be, and I still am, a pretty big scary movie wimp. I really hate anything with like rape or like any kind of like woman being stalked or attacked or that kind of thing. I don't like anything like that. But I have gotten a little braver in the last few years. I've tried to sort of expand my repertoire a little bit. I don't know, it might not sound scary to other people, but I went to see a movie like 10 Cloverfield Lane, which to me was really scary and very well done. And actually was my favorite of that year. I liked Get Out a lot. I've seen things like Stranger Things. So I've tried over the last little bit to kind of expand a little bit, but still, I'm pretty tame. Like the one movie that I didn't like that I was kind of pushing my comfort zone is I saw The Gift, and that was too scary for me. That was too, like, I don't know, with like what happens to the woman in that movie, and that was just not for me. It was well done, but it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even with me, I don't like super gory or like super sadistic kind of horror. Like the closest I've come with like slasher movies is the first Halloween, which is surprisingly not bad when you think about the subgenre that it started. It's not really gory or anything. And then Scream also.
Yeah.
But beyond that, yeah.
I did just recently watch Scream. And I think a lot of the humor was a little lost on me because I haven't seen these other franchises. But I did it for my Blind Spot series, which is the whole point of that series, is getting out of your comfort zone and pushing yourself. Yeah. And I did enjoy it. I particularly, I thought because it wasn't taking itself too seriously. So I didn't really get that scared because it wasn't like, it was kind of had a spirit of fun about it. And so, yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. But yeah, mostly I'm more about like Amblin style horror more than anything else. And we'll get more into that.
Yeah.
Because I kind of feel like Spielberg kind of took the reins from Disney in that sense, realizing that, hey, Disney was kind of doing the same thing, but Spielberg kind of was doing it in other areas, realizing that, hey, we don't have to put on kid gloves when we make movies for families, you know. Kids can be scared and they're not going to be warped by it or anything like that.
Right. And that some kids will think it's really fun. So let's dive into this series. So the very first movie that I ever reviewed for Disney Scares Month is Watcher in the Woods. And we actually have done a whole podcast comparing the new Watcher in the Woods, which everyone has forgot about already.
Yes.
To the old film. And we both felt like the new one was fine, right? I mean, it had problems, but so did the original, and it improved on some things. It was worse in other ways. But yeah, what are your thoughts on Watcher in the Woods original?
The original, like, I kind of feel like the two have kind of like a reverse problem in a way. Like the original film is like really, really cool from like a visual standpoint. Like I really like the camera work that they do, like the roving camera, like around the houses and like around the house and in the woods and stuff. But like the acting, especially from Lynn Holly Johnson, is not great. Right. and I feel like that's like the reverse problem in the remake. Like I haven't watched that one recently, but it's not really visually exciting in the way that the original was, even though the acting is better.
Well, and the new one, as I recall, it's been a while, but as I recall, the new one didn't set up the mystery quite as compellingly. Like they were, I don't know, trying to make it about the plague and a doctor and some of the stuff, the supernatural elements were sort of taken out. And I think that hurt the mystery kind of element, that they felt a need to sort of explain everything and everything had to have an origin, which makes it less scary.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and that's one thing that's really cool about The Watcher in the Woods is like you don't really know entirely what's happening until the very, very end. Yeah. Like the last scene. Like you know there's something out in the woods, but you don't know what it is. You know what people think it is, but
yeah. Well, and like the word in the glass Like that was pretty scary. And there's certain things like it sets up the mystery well in like the
Yeah.
triangles, like what does the triangles mean, or sort of the stuff. And it kind of I think they do a really good job with that. And Betty Davis is so good that she adds a lot of atmosphere into the movie, and it's just something sort of refreshing and fun. Like I like, if I was a parent, I would want to try to introduce my kids to as many genres as possible. And I think that Watcher in the Woods is a great way to introduce kids to like supernatural horror without it being like something that will be too scary for like a like 8 and up. I think it's fine.
Oh yeah, definitely. And even then, there's still some imagery that still sticks with you in a way that nothing in the remake does. Like I think of that,
Yeah.
of the figure in the mirror with the blindfold on in the original film. Like that's pretty creepy, and there's nothing in the remake that sticks with me.
Well, like for instance, they have the triangles in the original movie that appear in the glass, which we don't know what does that mean. So there's more mystery. Whereas in the remake, crosses appear, which is more like we know what a cross means. We know it, like it's less sort of intriguing, less different. And so I think that there's just stuff like that wasn't the same. But yeah, Watcher in the Woods is a fun little movie.
Yeah.
With some pretty bad acting.
Yeah. There's one line that Lynn Holly Johnson says in that makes me cringe. Like there's only 2 things in pop culture history that really make you cringe. And it's the Family Ties theme song is one of them. We don't have to go into that. and then the line where Lynn Holly Johnson's like, "It's not Karen, it's someone else."
Oh yeah.
That line always makes me cringe.
That's funny. Yeah.
But.
That's funny. So my second pick for Disney Scares Month was Frankenweenie. And this is Tim Burton, and I think it is by far the best movie that he has made in the last 10 years at least. For me, not even close. Nothing else even comes close to it that he has done. And I wish that he would continue to tell his own stories and that he would continue with animation, because I just feel like this movie has so much more heart, so much more creativity than all of his live action films that he's done in the last decade. And I really do love it. It's got such a sweetheart. Like I'm not even a dog owner, and I am just like, oh, and it's funny. It's got sort of a quirky sense of humor, I think. And I just love sort of the black and white feel to it in the aesthetics. I think it's really cool. I don't know. What do you think about Frankenweenie?
Yeah. I actually have not seen this one, so this is the first encounter that I have not actually seen.
Oh, really?
But that's amazing. I've seen scenes from it though, and I really like the visual style and the quirkiness of it. Like, I kind of feel like Tim Burton really has to feel passionate about a project for the movie to be good. He's not like other directors who are like, who can just pick up anything and do a solid job with it.
Well, and I think that CGI has made him less creatively interesting. That there's something about him having to do the stop motion, which I think makes him, it's slower. It just makes him stop. It makes him, I don't know. I just think there's so much more creativity, because I used to like Tim Burton, but I just have grown to a point where I hear his name's on a project, I'm like, oh, it's going to be terrible. And so, but this is the one project that I like that he's done in the last, like I said, decade. Since Sweeney Todd, there's really nothing else that I've liked at all. Is Miss Peregrine's. That was a huge disappointment, that movie. Ugh, it was so boring. I wanted to die. So it was not for me. But Frankenweenie, I really enjoyed. I think personally, it, along with Paranorman, were the best animated films of that year. And I think that both of them should have won. Everybody was like, oh, it's a tragedy that Wreck-It Ralph didn't win. Personally, I think that Paranorman deserved it. That's just my opinion. And I think that Frankenweenie would have been my second choice.
Oh, nice.
So, there
Yeah,
you go.
I do like the scenes that I've seen. I need to watch the whole thing.
Yeah, you do. Gotta watch it. All right. My third pick. I had a strong first year of Disney Scares Months. My third pick is Something Wicked, This Way Comes. This is based on the novel by Ray Bradbury, and it's basically about these two boys and all of these other people that are in this town that all have their own sort of their own insecurities and problems. And this carnival man comes into town with all of these strange funhouse kind of exhibits, whatever, and he promises them that he will take away these insecurities and take away their pains. And but of course the magic has its costs. And I love this movie. I think this movie is so beautifully filmed. I think it does have heart because you get to see where these insecurities lie. Like the one boy's father, played by Jonathan Robards, he is super insecure about the fact that he's an older father and he doesn't feel like he can do what he needs to do for his son. And so he's really insecure about that. And so there's that. And then there's the shopkeeper who's missing a limb from the war. There's a teacher who kind of pines after her beautiful youth. There's these different things, and it's just cool and interesting and scary, and I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah, I love this movie too. Like, it's interesting. Like, I was reading about Something Wicked This Way Comes, like the whole story's history overall.
Mm-hmm.
And Ray Bradbury had been working for like a really long time to get that novel made into a movie. Like even before it was a novel, like Gene Kelly was originally going to direct it from like an original screenplay. But when that didn't happen, Bradbury adapted it into a novel, and then Sam Peckinpah was going to make it for a while.
Oh yeah.
And then eventually it came to Disney. But I don't know what those other film versions would have been like. I think Gene Kelly behind the wheel sounds really interesting for that. But I really like the way it came out because it looks like Bradbury's like a very poetic kind of writer, like a very lyrical kind of writer.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie really has that look to it, kind of a sepia tone almost look to it. Like it's nostalgic, but it's not like rose-colored glasses nostalgic, because of the carnival largely.
Yeah, and the production design is so cool within the carnival, and also with just with the town, which is with everything. And there's lots of like little scares in the sort of bigger scares. Like there's this pretty scary scene with a if you're scared of big spiders, there's a pretty good scene with some spiders. There's some like little moments that I think work as well. So altogether, it just works. And I think it's very underrated. And I guess like it had like a really rocky production. And so maybe that hurt it a little bit. But and it is pretty scary for kids. I'd probably recommend it more for older kids. Personally, I don't know. What do you think as far as what you would recommend?
Yeah, probably for older kids, like between like I think like 8 and 12, pretty much the age of the two boys in the movie, I think would be like a perfect age.
Like if certainly if your kids are old enough to watch Stranger Things, then for sure they're fine.
Yeah, definitely.
But I wouldn't be surprised if the people behind Stranger Things were somewhat influenced by Something Wicked This Way Comes. It has that feel, I think, as Stranger Things, as Something Wicked This Way Comes to me.
Yeah, I wanted to mention really quick, two things. Like one, Jonathan Pryce is Mr. Dark. He is really good at it, and he's like intimidating and scary without being over the top about it. He's very like even keeled the whole time,
which makes him scarier.
Yeah.
Like when he has the tattoos on his hands of the boys, like that's pretty scary.
Yeah. And then I really like the whole deal with the devil aspect of it. Like those stories where like you get everything you thought you wanted, but there's always like an ironic twist to it. Right. Like the teacher who gets her beauty back, but then she's stricken blind immediately after that. Yeah. So she can't see it. Or like even Jason Robards and Jonathan Pryce's like confrontation in the library where he's looking for the boys because he knows that they're there, Mr. Dark, where they're talking about like Mr. Dark offers him his youth if he'll turn in the boys again. And like he has a diary, and every page he rips out, he's like taking a year off of his offer, you know. And he's talking about the things that happen, like with every year, like the bad parts of getting older. It's like a really intense scene, and all it is like tearing pages out of a book and talking.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I agree. It's really, really good and really well acted. This, unlike say you're a Watcher in the Woods, this one's really well acted. So
yeah.
All right. Well, my third choice for Disney Scares Month was Dragon Slayer, and this is a Touchstone film. I believe it was released along with Paramount, I think. Paramount is a co-production between Paramount and Walt Disney. So it doesn't have Disney on the cover per se, but it was definitely a Disney film. And this is a film that I think a lot of people that like your Lord of the Rings, your Harry Potters, your fantasy, I think that they would really like this movie. And I think this movie should be right up there with a remake because I think it's just got everything that people like.
Yeah, definitely. Like this is another, I know, this is one that's kind of obscure, so I kind of feel like I don't know, maybe less ashamed of having seen it. Yeah. Like my first exposure to it was seeing Napoleon. I'm getting ahead of myself. The poster for it in Napoleon Dynamite's bedroom in the movie Napoleon Dynamite. It was like my first exposure to it. But like it looks interesting, and it has an actor that I usually think is interesting, Peter McNichol, in it.
It's kind of strange casting a little bit. Like they're fine, but they're not your typical leads in these kind of things. I don't know, they're just they're a little bit odd casting. It's been a little while since I've seen it, to be completely frank, but the biggest strength of this movie is the practical effects of the dragon, that they actually created dragons, that kind of like they did for Jurassic Park with the dinosaurs. And there's some pretty grisly scenes where like people are eaten and you actually see like flesh and you see people burned and some stuff like that are pretty gnarly. So if you have the faint of stomach, that might be a little hard. And there's the one king, he offers up a virgin to sacrifice every year, and there's his daughter who's been saved from the sacrifice, and then she ends up getting kind of convinced that this is unfair and she shouldn't be removed from the lottery, and so she ends up in the thing with the dragon. And so there's some pretty gnarly scenes of people getting sacrificed and stuff. And but it's an entertaining little movie. I mean, fantasy has never been my favorite, but I think if you like fantasy, you should definitely check it out. It's good. Good little movie.
I like Harry Potter, so I'll give it a try.
Let's see. Okay. Yeah. If you like, it's more Tolkien-y than Harry Potter-y, but like, if you like fantasy, give it a shot. Give it a shot. Yeah. And I just think in the whole Game of Thrones, just the fantasy, I just think that they could remake this movie, and I think it could do well.
Yeah.
All right. My next pick, I thought was a scary movie. It turned out not to be a scary movie, but I picked The Black Hole.
Yeah.
And have you seen this one?
I have seen some of it, and it's been sitting on my bookshelf, on my DVD shelf, so I should have watched it before this, but I didn't. Sorry. I've seen scenes of it, though. I've seen about half, maybe about a quarter of it, and I don't think it's completely out of place in a Disney Scares Month. There's some pretty crazy scenes in that movie.
Yeah, there are some, but it really feels like an original episode of Star Trek.
Yeah.
original series for sure. Like everything, like all the, it was made in 1979, which was right at the end of Star Trek original series, I believe. Don't quote me on that. But
It's
because I think Star Trek the Motion Picture came out in 79, 8 or 9.
79.
79,
So
yeah. So right around the same time. And it definitely, even in the costumes, the robots, that, well, actually, there's certain parts that feel sort of Star Warsy, like the robots. But then a lot of it feels very Star Trek to me. More, I'd say it's more Star Trek than Star Wars. And there, you have a pretty good cast with your Anthony Perkins, which is always hard because he's such a villain, you know, like he's so kind of typecast, but like he plays one of the doctors on the board the ship. Then you have he's probably the biggest name. Ernest Borgnine is in it. Roddy McDowall's in it as one of the voices. And yeah, it's basically this sci-fi story about this crew that ends up on this ship that has been lost, and there's these like faceless drones that run the ship, and like the longer they're kind of on the ship, the more these drones start to become more suspect, and it sort of becomes the people versus these drones. And like I said, very Star Trek-y for sure.
Yeah, and there's like I was thinking about, there's a big like kind of a religious subtext to like the twist at the end of this movie that feels very Star Trek-esque as well.
Yeah.
And that, but like speaking of horrific scenes, that scene where Anthony Perkins, I think, discovers the secret behind the drones. That's a pretty horrific scene.
Yeah, that is. Yeah.
And then when what Maximilian does to him right after that, it's pretty intense too.
That's true.
And that's,
that's true, because the final scene is kind of like there's sort of, it's almost like purgatory or hell, kind of a space that they're in with all of these like these enrobed aliens that are, and it's the black hole, I guess. It's pretty. And there's kind of a angel-like character, so it's an interesting film. It was a little boring for me. I didn't love it, but it's interesting. It's an interesting film, and it would be an interesting one to remake too. I think they could do it, and it would be. I'd be curious to see a new take on it. Like, that's the ones I think are the best movies to remake, is movies that have a lot of potential, that like certain people remember enough to like, but they're not like beloved. You know what I mean? Those are perfect.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you can really make your stamp on them. You can do something very different, but you still got something to kind of go off of. So like Space Dragon was kind of the same for me with that. You know, it's like there's enough people that like it, but like not people that are usually very like reverential about it.
Oh yeah, definitely. So. And I'm just glad the movie exists. Like that and Tron and Something Wicked This Way Comes. And actually pretty much everything we've talked about so far. Mm-hmm. Like it's kind of a sign that, like, I've talked about this before on Twitter, but like a lot of people maligned Ron Miller because of the way he didn't really understand animation, largely because Walt didn't really let him work in animation that much. Uh-huh. But like you could tell, like with live action, he was really trying to go new places, you know?
Yeah.
Like even if it didn't always work out. So I think I don't want to say he's the best CEO, obviously, Disney ever had, because he wasn't. But like he deserves more credit for being more creative than people tend to think he was.
Fair enough. I can co-sign to that. So then we had Return to Oz was my next pick. This is a movie that like scarred me as a child. It was way too scary for me as a kid. I hated it. I love the original so much, and to be honest, I still kind of hate it. It's not for me. I totally see as an adult why other people like it, because it has a unique visual style and it's, does its own thing. But I just feel like it's just too mean-spirited, especially to have when you have Oz on that name. And I get that people say, oh, well, it's more like the book or whatever. But when you have Aunt Em taking Dorothy to be get electroshock therapy, and then like everybody just being horrible and scary, and there's no release. There's no like sense of joy in the film for me. It's just, I don't know. It's just all unpleasant, and you need more of the, more of the joy, more of the pauses for it to work for me. And so it just ends up being this kind of unpleasant experience for me. I don't know.
Yeah. There's a lot of freaky imagery in that one.
Yeah.
Like, even like the good guys don't really look like good guys in the typical sense. Like the giant pumpkin-headed guy and stuff like that. And it's like, I don't know. It's like, what am I trying to say? Like, I know like the guy who directed it, Walter Murch, he worked with like Coppola a lot in the 70s, like on Apocalypse Now and stuff like that. And I kind of feel like he was trying to bring that sensibility that was popular in the 70s, kind of let's tackle darker subject matter and stuff like that to like this Oz story. And I don't know if it fits particularly well. It's like, it's two good tastes that don't taste good together, I guess.
Because that's what makes the original so brilliant, is that it has these darker moments. Like when Dorothy is crying for Aunt Em in the witch's castle, that moment is brutal. I don't think Judy Garland gets enough credit for that, her acting in that movie and in that scene in particular, when she sees Em on the globe and she's crying, and it's pretty hopeless, and it gets there's definitely some really scary moments in the original Wizard of Oz, but it's always broken up by a song, by a joke, by a lighter scene, so that all together it feels magical.
Yeah. And like that scene in The Wizard of Oz that you mentioned, that's like one of the darkest scenes in the film, like you said, not just because of the way Judy Garland's acting, but the way Margaret Hamilton as a Wicked Witch like mocks her in her moment of like total despair and loss, how the Wicked Witch just laughs at her, and literally makes fun of her, like the way she's crying and everything,
Yeah. And I don't think that any of the attempts to recreate Wizard of Oz, with the exception for me of maybe Wicked on Broadway, I don't think that any of them have been able to find that balance of tones right. Like, I don't think the Wiz does. I don't think that Return to Oz does. I don't think Oz the Great and Powerful does. I don't think that terrible animated one does. I can't think of the name. I don't know. What's it?
Dorothy's Return.
I'd like Legends of Oz. Yeah. And there's been a couple other little ones. There was one that they did for TV, Emerald City, that I thought actually had some potential, but I kind of lost interest. Everybody else hated it, but they kind of did a steampunk approach. But it didn't work. And then there's like a Muppets one. There's a few other ones, but it just a lot of the problems with retelling Oz is that a lot of the iconic parts of Wizard of Oz are owned by MGM, I believe. And so you can't use them. You can't use Ruby Slippers. You can't use Yellow Brick Road. You can't use Munchkins. You can't, like, all of this stuff is like owned by them. So like when Disney's trying to make a movie, they have to either use stuff from the books or they have to come up with completely their own stuff.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah, definitely. I will say I liked Oz of the Great and Powerful, but largely because of the scene where like the wizard brings in all those machinery and stuff. Like it's kind of his triumphant moment at the end. I like that. But.
There were some nice visuals in that movie, but I hated Mila Kunis's character. She was the worst to me.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. So now we're going on to the next year, where this is year 2. This is last year. So I guess we should pick things up. Okay, my next pick was Blackbeard's Ghost, and it turns out watching this movie, it's not really scary at all. But I just was going off of the ghost, and it's Peter Ustinov is a treasure. Was a treasure, I guess. He was hilarious, and he is so funny in this movie that it's just kind of a Peter Ustinov show. He's this boozy, terrible ghost pirate that makes this guy's life a nightmare, and it's pretty funny. I like it.
Yeah, I have not seen this one. It's been one I've been wanting to see, though.
Yeah.
So I don't really have a lot to say, obviously.
But Peter Ustinov is the best thing in any movie he's in. I was not a fan of We Are No Angels. This is a Christmas classic, but I did not like it. But he was hilarious in it. And he's amazing in this. And he makes it's a one-man show. I mean, he's just so funny. So,
of course, he's great as Prince John and Robin Hood as
Prince
well.
John. Yeah, he's the best. I love Snuff. So that one is not scary, but it's fun. Then my next pick last year was Toy Story of Terror. So this was the direct to television, whatever special that they did. And I think this was actually really, really good. Like if you wanted to have a grown-up discussion with a child about a fear they were having, I think this is actually a really good movie for them to watch, because Jesse's fear of being in the box is really well portrayed, I think, and well done. And they also do a really good job of bringing in sort of like classic horror tropes in a kid-friendly way, like the creaking floorboards and the door, kind of thing, and the green lights and the spooky things. I think really fun, and I like some of the new characters they created for this story. I really enjoyed it. I don't know. Have you seen this one?
I have this one on DVD. I actually found it after looking for it for a really long time. Super excited when I found it. But I really do like this one a lot, like more than Toy Story that time forgot by far.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it really did well being scary, but not in like an overly, not in a traumatizing way. And I thought the story was really creative. And I also really liked meeting Combat Carl in that one.
Yeah,
another Combat Carl
character.
Especially since he was voiced by Carl Weathers. For those who don't know, he was Apollo Creed in the first 3 Rocky movies. Mm-hmm. Rocky movies, that is. He also trained Adam Sandler and Happy Gilmore. I really liked him. So I was happy to see him hear him in the movie.
Yeah, it's really fun. They do a really good job. All the voice work is great, of course, because it's Toy Story. And it really gives me, I enjoyed both of them. I do agree this is stronger than the Christmas one, but I thought they were both fun. I enjoyed both of them. And so it kind of gives me confidence in Toy Story 4, because I just feel like these characters just work in telling stories for whatever reason. They just, they're just good. So we'll see how that is, but I'm hopeful, especially with what Tim Allen recently said about it.
Yeah.
And it's pretty exciting. So, all right. Then next, I did a very obscure film, which I'd be shocked if you'd seen, called Mr. Boogedy. And there is The Bride of Boogedy as well. Have you heard of it?
That name makes me laugh. I had heard of it. I had not seen it, though.
Yeah. It's really fun. If you like sort of old school, practical, cheesy effects, I have fun with those kind of effects. A lot of people want things to be like super realistic, but I actually like when they at one point when they see Mr. Boogedy, like their heads go their hair goes right into the air, which is really fun. And you see the Mr. Boogedy, and he's got all these like scabs and stuff. He's like, and it's just a really good time. Like, and it's only, I think, like an hour.
Oh, okay.
It was for the like Wonderful World of Disney back in the day.
Uh-huh.
And the Bride of Boogedy I actually didn't like quite as much because it just wasn't quite as much fun, I don't think, as the first one. But the director's name is Oz Scott, and I've read some interviews with him, and it just seems like they were having the time of their life. They were just this is just a classic scary movie for kids. That's just like kind of in the vein of like a Universal monster movie. That's just kind of silly and fun. Because you have this dad who is this jokester and constantly playing tricks on his kids at the same time that this house they moved into is possessed by Mr. Boogedy. And so like sometimes the tricks, the scares are the dad, and sometimes they're actually Mr. Boogedy. And then of course the dad gets like his revenge kind of in the end for all his tricks. And I recommend it. I really enjoyed it a lot. It was really good. So then we had Halloween Town. The first Halloween Town was my next pick. Have you seen this?
I have not. Like, I have to confess that I haven't seen any of like the Disney Channel original movies that are on this list. But I've obviously heard of Halloween Town, but I don't think there's anybody that's my age that hasn't.
Yeah, I thought you might just because this one was so popular and it's so old. It's just this year's 20-year anniversary for the first Halloween Town, so that's pretty exciting, and it's pretty fun. You've got this this mom with her two kids. The one's like three kids. The Brainiac son, and then a daughter who's wanting to be more independent. She wants to go out at Halloween, but the mom's preventing her. And she has this crazy grandma, played by Debbie Reynolds, who's a delight, who comes in, and we find out that this family of witches, and so. And they've been trying to like hide this from this daughter for as long as she could. She has these powers, and there's this whole place called Halloween Town, and so they end up going there, and there's a villain I can't even remember, and there's like a various shenanigans go on, and it's just silly and fun, and Debbie Reynolds of course elevates it, and I haven't seen any of the others, but yeah, I think it's a fun watch, Halloween Town. Okay, then next we have Hocus Pocus. So Hocus Pocus, if it was just like a movie that I found like in in sort of these obscure like Mr. Boogedy or whatever, I'd be like, oh yeah, it's pretty good. It's decent. I like the fact that the three witches are like totally evil. Like there's no attempt to like give them a softer moment or something. Like they're just like really bad. I like that. But I just don't think it deserves this. I think the praise is way out of line for the quality of the movie. And I think that a lot of the choices are very strange for me. I do not understand them constantly bringing up the young boy's virginity and him being kind of made fun of throughout the movie. I feel is very weird. And I don't think that the acting from the kids is up to par. I do think that the three women are having a good time, so we enjoy that. But it's just average for me. I do not understand I think that pretty much every single movie that we've talked about so far, I like better than Hocus Pocus. I don't know. I just don't quite get the appeal of it, to be honest.
Yeah, I guess this is a place where we come from different places. We've talked about this recently on social media, in fact. But I am someone who grew up with the movie. I watch it every Halloween still. I've already watched it for this year. And like, it's like a case where I understand the criticisms that people have, but since I grew up with it, they don't really bother me as much. I think is primarily what it is. And like, I have lots of good memories. And I think the only really real jokes with the kids at work, I think those two bullies are so stupid that they're kind of funny. Uh-huh. But I think those are really the only jokes with the kids that really work well. most of like the really funny sequences have to do with the three witches, like where they meet Gary Marshall as the devil. I think those jokes work well for me. And then the bus driver who falls in love with Sarah Jessica Parker. I think those jokes work fairly well, even though they are kind of racy. But yeah, most of the jokes with the sisters work well, not so much with the kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, it's definitely not one that I ever watched until I was, I don't know if I'd seen it even before doing this project. So I didn't watch it till I was an adult, and I was just like, really? That's it? Like, it has a whole fireworks show and thing in Disneyland. Like, there are so many Disney movies that are way better, that deserve their own fireworks show. Like, what? I don't know. Just a little crazy. So, okay. So we'll go through these next ones pretty quick because you haven't seen any of them. But so now we're getting to this year. So this year, I have done TV movies this year because, you know, I'm running out of. I try to always make family movie night choices that I really like, or that I can confidently recommend. And like, so certain movies like Eddie Murphy's Haunted Mansion, you know, I'm probably not going to like it that much. Maybe, who knows? Maybe it's a hidden gem.
For the record, I like it.
What's that?
For the record, I actually like that one.
Oh, you do?
But yeah.
It doesn't look like my cup of tea, but anyway, so there might be a theatrical release, which is technically a scary movie from Disney, but I'm not going to pick it if I don't like it and want to recommend it. So anyway, so I have done 4, and then there's one more. Well, I will have done 5 picks for this month that when this airs. So starting out, my first one was Don't Look Under the Bed. And this is a Disney Channel original movie. And this was actually really well done. I thought the whole lore of the movie was actually very clever. The whole idea is that you have these imaginary friends who lose faith in your imaginary friend too soon. Then it becomes a boogeyman instead of an imaginary friend. And so what basically happens is this girl starts seeing all of these weird things, and it turns out she has this imaginary friend, and who is quickly becoming the boogeyman. And the boogeyman is very well done and very scary. Like, they nailed it. And a lot of this has to do with her brother who got cancer, and who she had this, it kind of made her grow up too soon, but then she also kind of convinced her brother to give up on his imaginary friend. And so that's why they're kind of out to get her. And the imaginary friend is back, kind of trying to, anyway. So it's a pretty complicated little lore, and it's pretty interesting and well done. And the visual effects are fun. Like, it's sort of like Mr. Boogedy, that kind of like cheesy but like effective, that I actually like. I don't need all of my scares to be like super realistic. Like, I kind of like, I don't know, like, it's sort of like going to a ride at Disneyland, you know, where the animatronics, obviously they don't look like real, but there's something fun about that to me. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was solid. It was the first Disney Channel original movie to have an interracial kiss. Biracial, whatever, kiss. I don't know what you call it. But anyway, so it was kind of a groundbreaker in that regard. And I thought the acting was solid. And yeah, it's a good one. I recommend it.
Okay, I'll check it out.
Yeah. And then the next one was Twitches. This is Tia and Tamara Mowry. And they basically starts out kind of Parent Trappy. And they're the daughters of this queen in this land, and they kind of get sent to Earth to protect them. You know, the story we've seen a million times, but they end up getting sent to different families. One of them is in a very rich family, one of them is a very poor family, and they end up meeting, and there's this Parent Trap kind of moment, like, oh my gosh, like, we're twins, we meet. But they're both older, which I appreciate in this. They're both like 21. And they both have very different backgrounds, and one has lost her mother and the other has two parents who are actually like interesting and well portrayed. And once it kind of gets, there's this bad guy who's kind of a groaner. He's not great, but like once he kind of gets let out that they have found each other, and so then the spirits get unleashed or whatever, and so then they have to like figure out how they're going to fight this villain. And it was really pretty fun, pretty well done characters. I liked the contrast between their different lives, and but it wasn't just like you're rich, I'm poor. It was also like I've lost my mother, you have parents, so their lives were more different than just that surface level. And I don't know, they did a good job, and I was impressed. It was good.
Yeah.
So I recommend it. And then the last one, then the next one was Girl vs. Monster. And it's kind of a grown-worthy title. But this was a fairly recent one, and you can watch it on Netflix. And I thought that this does everything the Hocus Pocus does, but I think it does it even better. It's about this girl who is like kept in the house by her parents. She's not allowed to leave on Halloween, particularly. And it turns out that she's actually from a lineage of monster hunters. And certain things happen, and these monsters end up getting unleashed because she tries to escape the house to visit her boyfriend or whatever. And I really enjoyed, there's 3 monsters because there's 3 main kids, and each kid has their own monster who grows in strength based on their fears and really plays off of their fears. And so like one of her greatest fears is singing in front of people. And so like the more she's scared of that, the more it grows. Plus she also has like the generational fear of like that goes passed down. But there's a scarecrow monster that's pretty scary, I think, actually, and pretty well done. And then there's a Themadoza one. And then the lead one was very much like the Bette Midler character, I think, in Hocus Pocus, but like I liked her even better. I thought she was really scary, and it's really cool because even the parents have to let go of their fears of their daughter and trust her, because the more that they are fearful, the stronger this monster gets. And I thought it was really good. I mean, the only thing that I didn't like is there's lots of these musical segments that I'm sure the tweens like love and they're amazing, but that weren't my favorite. And so another one that's actually pretty similar from 1978 was Child of Glass. And this is a really good movie. I liked it a lot. It's not that scary. It has some scary moments at the beginning, but it's basically about these kids. They get moved into this big old house. And there is a scene where, and the little boy, he ends up finding this ghost in the barn that is there because of this uncle that she had that's very abusive. And she is waiting to find her child of glass. And so she has this poem that he has to figure out what the child of glass is. And so he has to it's kind of a mystery. He's looking for all the clues, and him with this his friend, this girl. And there's some peril, there's some tension of what happens to these kids. There's also a scene where the girl becomes human so that he can go to a dance with her.
Very Casper-like.
Yeah, spoiler alert. But it was really good. I liked it a lot. I thought the acting was really good and had good atmosphere. And what ends up being the solution there's also this drunk guy who kind of tries to attack them at some points. That was pretty scary. So out of those made-for-TV movies, which one sounds the most interesting to you? I'm curious.
the don't look under the bed one. I think that idea about imaginary friends becoming boogeyman is like really creative and really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
So that's the main selling point with me.
Yeah. Well, you'll have to watch it and let us all know what you think of it.
Totally.
So, yeah. So do like the Hufflepuff movie. If I wanted to go there, there's some other ones that would be a lot of fun. So if you have suggestions for Disney Scares Month, let us know in the comment section. Let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts and about any of these movies or about what I should do. That would be really fun. So thanks for indulging me, letting me talk about some of these that you hadn't seen and sharing your insight about the ones you had. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. I'm glad to be here. So
yeah, it was really fun. And where can people find you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Howell489 and Howell Howell spelled the normal way, or at vintagevestibule.wordpress.com.
Do you want to say your spiel again?
Oh yeah, sure. You can find me on Twitter at Howell489, Howell Howell, then the numbers 489, or at my blog at vintagevestibule.wordpress.com. And I just have an article there just from yesterday. Well, it won't be yesterday by the time this comes out, but from recently about Halloween TV episodes. And I created a lineup just to watch on Halloween, just in case you don't feel like watching the usual horror movies. So
great. Yes, and you can find me at Rachel's Reviews all over social media and here in YouTube and on iTunes. Please leave in your reviews for the podcast on iTunes. It really helps out the podcast. Really appreciate it. And thanks so much. I really appreciate it, AJ, and we will talk again soon.
Yes.
Okay. Bye.